So this is just a quick trigger warning. Obviously this video is about emetophobia, so I do say the word sick in this video and words to that effect, and if you find that triggering, this is not for you. Also, I do mention some fairly unhealthy food and eating habits, and I don't want this to trigger or upset anyone, so if you are struggling or still early on in your journey, this video may not be for you. But as I say, this is just my journey and my story, and I wanted to share it in the hope that it may help someone feel less alone. So thank you for allowing me to share my story, and let's get on with the video. Hello guys, so it's Megan and thank you for clicking on this video. Welcome if you're brand new, and if not, then welcome back. Thanks for joining me again. And I'm not sure whether there will be quite a few new people watching this video, because when I was suffering my worst with this phobia, I always was looking for videos of people that I could relate to, and so I could feel like I wasn't going through it on my own, because I discovered that there's so many people with this phobia, but sometimes when it's you feel like you're the only one in the world. Those who don't know what emetophobia is, I'll get the actual Google definition so we're getting it totally right. Emetophobia is a phobia that causes overwhelming, intense anxiety pertaining to vomit. This specific phobia can also include subcategories of what causes the anxiety, including a fear of vomiting or seeing others vomit. So, brief history, and then I'll talk about how it affects my life now. Brief history, I think it began when I was very young and had a really bad sickness bug, and I was really poorly and was being sick non-stop, and I believe that's what caused it, because obviously who likes being sick? Nobody. But I think it was that absolute panic, and it lasted for days and days, and I just did not get better, like probably for a week, but then I was fine, you know, like any kid bounces back. But I think that was the original trigger point, and it just stayed with me after that. So little branches of issues that came from that was very bad issues with food in primary school, and none of us knew why at the time. It wasn't like a thing of wanting to be thin or wanting to lose weight, because I was literally a primary school child, and I think looking back it was probably because of the sick phobia, because it went right through primary, high school, now even. But little things I remember specifically is washing my hands constantly. Like I had a real obsessive compulsion to wash my hands non-stop, and I think that related back to sick, to get rid of germs off my hands, to avoid the likelihood of me getting sick. But I know some people might be thinking, well, that's good, washing your hands and, you know, staying clean and hygienic, but no, it was obsessive to the point where I'd be like washing them and then going back to the toilet just to wash them again to make sure, or going out the house I'd be like, wait, I need to wash my hands, like really bizarre things. And then another thing I remember from primary school is avoiding the first toilet cubicle, like in the girls' bathroom, because I always thought, like my brain worked, that if someone was going to rush to be sick, they'd go in the first cubicle because it was like the handiest one to them. So I always avoided that, and I think that stuck with me as well, because I never tend to go in the first cubicle, and I think that's just a subconscious thing of associating that with the rush of someone panicking that they were going to be sick and dying into the first cubicle. So yeah, it's very weird control behaviours that I've kind of shown over the years, and that was primary school. And then one more thing I remember is I had this thing where I'd like, because I've got a gap in my teeth, this sounds disgusting, but it's what I did, I'm just sharing my story. So I'd kind of chew my food to the point where it was absolute mush, because I didn't want to choke, because then I'd be sick. So I'd chew it until it was absolute mush, so it'd take me ages to eat, and then so I knew it was like soft enough to go down, I'd like kind of, I can't explain it, like push it through the gap in my teeth, and if it was thin enough to fit through the gap, I thought there's no way I can choke on that, so I won't be sick. So yeah, that is why it took me hours. Imagine doing that, like I can still picture doing it now, and that was just another control behaviour, and all of these started when I was like very young, which looking back is bizarre, and I can't believe that I've gone through my whole life with this phobia, and it's quite interesting looking back and thinking of how early it started, and just remembering so vividly about the avoiding the toilet situation because I just associated it with sick. It is just such like obsessive behaviour for someone so young. Moving on, I got to a point where I was very, very bad with it. I'm just skimming over this because I want to explain how it affects my life now, because I'm currently living with emetophobia. It's not like I've got over it. So when I was at my worst point, I was at counselling because I was very anxious, wouldn't leave the house, would barely eat, and I would never say it's been an eating disorder as in weight related, but it's always been to do with sick and that phobia of being sick, of being unwell. And after many different counsellors and talking therapies and CBT, which is cognitive behavioural therapy, we've realised that I think it comes down to control, because the fear would be eating something that made me sick or catching a bug that made me sick and being sick in public, not being able to get to a toilet in time, and that fear of embarrassment and being out of control. And then the other one was like thinking, oh, like I'm not going to survive this, even though it's just sick. It's like the end of the world, it's like I'm dying, which is, sounds very dramatic, but when you're a person that has a phobia of sick, it's like, it's the end of the world. It's the end of the world. So, I mean, that would stop me from enjoying myself on holidays, because I would just eat chips. Like there was whole holidays for like 2-3 weeks, because we did used to go to Greece for like 2 to 3 weeks every summer, and I would like, it was a bit of a joke in our family, to be honest, but obviously we took it seriously. But they'd all say like, oh, we go on holiday and put weight on and you come home and you've lost it. And I still do that to this day. Like I went to America last year and I came home and I'd lost weight, and this is because it's another control thing. I don't want to be sick, and I associate brightly coloured foods or funny textured foods with being sick. The lighting's changed because I'm right in front of a window. So yeah, I'd live off like chips or chicken nuggets for like 2 to 3 weeks straight, just literally beige food, bread, chips, biscuits. Like that is my safe food now. Like I can push the boat out a bit more now, but I still have safe foods in my head, which is just plain beige, but I'll move on to that later. And eventually, getting to the root of the problem with my best counsellor that I ever had, we ended up getting this book. So it's this, it's called Cure Your Emetophobia and Thrive. And I think this book honestly helped me a lot. It puts a lot of things into perspective, and yeah, it's a self-help program to overcome your fear of being sick. And it's only sitting here talking, realising really that I always thought I was more scared of seeing people be sick. I mean, it's unpleasant. The whole thing is unpleasant. The smell, the body movements before someone's going to be, the sound, the whole thing is awful and nobody likes it. And I get a lot of people saying that to me. They're like, but no one likes sick. Who likes being sick? And it's not that, because it's actually a paralysing fear where you're like, it just stops everything. You can't explain it. Like someone might say they feel sick and most people are like, oh, you alright? Like, oh no, what can I do to help? And I'd be like, what do you mean? Like, do you actually feel like you're going to be sick? But are you alright though? When did you last eat? Do you think it's probably food poisoning? Yeah, it must be something you ate. It's not a bug, is it? All this is to the fear of me catching it and then me being sick. I would absolutely recommend this book if you are needing help, because it's fantastic. It's by Rob Kelly and it's got a lot of reading, like as you can see, a lot of reading, but it's also got like questions in that you fill out yourself and you can like grade yourself, and little quizzes and it's diagrams, and yeah, it's very good. So I feel like I've totally skimmed over all that, but that was the brief history. But what I really want to talk about is how it affects my life now, because although it's not running my life, it's a massive part of my life and something I don't think I'm going to get away from. Yeah, so just to put it in perspective, how many of you guys would think about sick every day or every minute of every day? Because there's not, well, maybe not every minute, but there's not a single hour, I can guarantee, not a single hour of my day in my life that I don't think about sick or being sick or punishing myself for eating certain things because I think I've got more chance of being sick, or panicking if I hear someone coughing because I'm thinking, what if they're going to be sick? Or yeah, I made a list on my phone so I could actually list off how it affects me now because I don't want to miss anything. So I am fully aware that my phobia has given me a very, very bad relationship with food. So touching more on the safe food, I was hoping to leave that in my childhood, but it's not the case because I still have my safe foods now. So I'm not a fussy eater at all. Like I do have a plant-based diet, but I'm not fussy if I'm at home because home feels safe. I know I've got my bathroom, my toilet, and I can always access it. So I'll eat anything at home. But if we were going out for a meal, I wouldn't order anything crazy because I think I might be sick. I don't know how I'm going to react to it. And then I can't look at food without thinking of how it would look if it came back out, which is very graphic, very grim. But how many people would think that? How many people would look at something and think, I wonder how that would look if it comes back out? Like, would I survive? Would it be manageable? Which moves on to textures, why I don't like certain textures. And then another thing with food is I feel like I miss out, you know, like takeaways and things. I'd always be avoiding them growing up because I'd think straight away, takeaway, food poisoning. I'd take ages to eat because I was like mushing up the food in my mouth obviously, and also because even now, not so much actually since I gave up meat, but I would absolutely dissect my food within an inch of its life to see if there was any pink bits, and if there was a single tiny bit and I'd eaten some, that was it. I'd be like on edge for the next week because I used to Google all the time, how long does it take to get food poisoning, like to show, and then I read that it can be like 24 hours or 3 to 5 days. So then immediately I got it in my head that I wouldn't be in the clear for 5 days. So if I ate something slightly, it wouldn't have even been bad, but in my head, if I'd thought I'd seen something bad on the food or like the slightest bit of pink or something, I'd be counting like 5 days onwards, and then I'd start to feel like I could breathe again because I'd feel like I'd got to the 5-day point. Like there's no way now I could have food poisoning off that particular thing. I believe the reason I went plant-based and vegetarian and things in the first place was because of control again, feeling like I'm cutting down my chances of food poisoning through meat and eggs and things like that, so I avoid them. But now it's actually turned into researching a lot about animals and things like that, so that's why I don't have dairy or anything, and it helps my stomach. You'll have to ignore the random shadows and light creeping in, but I normally use my ring light, but I thought, oh well, it'll be nice in front of the window because natural light and whatnot. But yeah, so another way that it affects me is counting food. So this applies to counting calories and counting food in like a number. So, you know, I'd have limits, so 3 biscuits a day, anything over that, and I'm like, that's like terrible, you're gonna be sick because of that. Or 2 slices of toast, I'll count, I'll be like, right, I've had 2 slices of toast, 3 biscuits, like, and I have these like numbers in my head that feel safe, and if I go over that, I think that's like increasing my chances of being sick. And then I'll obviously count calories, and I think that is more to do with like a control thing about weight, not sickness, but the counting in the terms of numbers is, if you understand what I mean. It's very, very weird what goes on in my brain. So another thing that I'll do is, I feel very uncomfortable talking about this actually, but I will sometimes have food, but then to make myself feel better about it, I'll like leave a tiny bit and put it in the bin, and then in my head it's like, well, I didn't eat it all, so I can't be sick, or I didn't eat it all, so I can't feel bad about it. So that's another thing. And then another one, which I used to do all the time and I felt it creeping back in at the moment, is getting food that I want to eat, and I'll be like putting it in my mouth to get the taste of it, but then spitting it back out into the bin so that I've not actually eaten it, so I won't be sick. Because I've got this thing where if I feel full in my tummy, it's like panic station, because that is like, well, I'm gonna have to be sick. What if I'm sick? Like all this panic going on in my head, and if someone else appears to be really full at a meal, like my dad or Louis, sometimes, you know, if you're full after a main meal, they'll be like, oh, I'm still gonna get a pudding, and then they'll be at that point where they're stuffed. And because I know how I feel when I'm full, I panic for them in case they're gonna be sick. And they're like, we're grown men, there's no need for you to panic about us feeling full. But I just can't help it because I associate full with being sick. So I think that's why I eat little and often rather than big meals, so it's more of a control thing, so tiny little portions throughout the day. Testing the waters, like I'll have that little bit and I'm not sick, so I'll have another little bit of this and another bit of this, which is not healthy because I'm not consistent with what I eat at all. I do want to stop doing that thing where I kind of eat something and then take it back out just to get the taste, but not to actually eat it, to lower the chances of being sick. I was always very funny about going places and not knowing the toilets and not knowing service stations, things like that, because it's all down to that fear of embarrassment if I'm going to be sick, feeling out of control, feeling humiliated, and that stopped me from doing a lot of things like school trips, holidays, concerts, all because of that fear of being sick away from home. And it's ruined holidays because of anxiety on the flight in case I'm sick, in case people around me are sick. Coach trips because there's always travel sick people, so I avoid that. I avoid boat trips because I think that people will be sick on that. And also the final thing I'll touch on is a lot of very negative self-talk. So I've really punished myself with words. If I've eaten something bad, it won't just be like, oh, you've eaten too much of that, what you like. It's like, well, if you're sick, it's your fault now, like, you're disgusting, you shouldn't have eaten this, you shouldn't have eaten that. And I find it really hard to get out of my head, to be honest, because it affects me in so many ways. There's not, like I say, there's not a moment that I don't think about it in the day. Everything, I think I've only just started to get a tiny bit better with my relationship with food, because I've started treating it as like something I can enjoy rather than something I just need to stay alive, because I used to associate food as being like the ultimate thing to stay away from because that would increase the chance of being sick. And only now I'm thinking, well, I can eat this just for fun or just because I want to, but it's still that process in my head first. It's like, do you need it? Do you think you'll be sick? I need a lot of reassurance despite being 22. I'll still message my dad sometimes with a food diary, because I keep a food diary all the time, so I can reflect back on it and see if I can afford to eat something else that day and whether my chances of being sick are going to be higher or not. It used to affect me a lot watching TV programmes with sick in it, like it'd send me into absolute panic. I'd have to leave the room or turn it off. I'd get hot sweats, I'd shake, I'd panic, and I was just seeing it on telly, so never mind seeing it in real life. So I got a lot better with that, but recently that was brought up again because I watched American Horror Story, the apocalypse one, and anyone that's seen that will know there's a huge scene in that. And I could not get that vision out of my head for days. I just kept thinking about it and thinking about it. So I don't think I'm quite as cured as I thought. Yeah, recently I actually was sick, and it was just a 24-hour bug. And I thought afterwards, do you know what? I coped with that really well. Maybe the phobia's all gone, but actually it's not, because then I realised that for most people they'd probably just be sick, and when they were better, they're better, that's it, that's fine. But for me, it's like weeks and weeks it carries on. Like I might be absolutely 100% fine, but I'll stick to eating bland, plain foods in case, or I'll be avoiding eating in case it happens again. And I'll be like punishing myself, like, what did you eat? Why were you sick? Like, it's your fault. Yeah. So I feel annoyed because I feel like this phobia has made me miss out on a lot. For example, I always wanted to be a nurse or a doctor or a midwife, and I feel like because of this phobia it stopped me, because I thought, well, I can't do anything in the healthcare profession because I'd have to deal with sick, and I can't do it, I just cannot do it. And then I also tried to go into teaching, and when I did part-time at primary school, I had to leave doing that as well because I couldn't deal with it, because I was in like a reception class, and there was, you know, there's always children being unwell and stuff, but I felt terrible because one of them had asked for my help one day, and I was like, I'll go and get the teacher And I just thought, how stupid that you can't even help a child. Like, obviously you'd have gone and got the teacher anyway, but I just felt myself distancing, like, okay, I'll go get the teacher, rather than being like, oh, it's okay, don't worry, because I was panicking myself. I think it makes you feel quite selfish having this phobia, because you just drop everything and you can't help them. Like, I've had experiences in the past where I've had like an ex-partner or something being poorly, and I was nowhere to be found because I couldn't be around it. I'd literally not get in the car, drive away, like, and now I avoid places where I've had experiences of sick or someone's been sick. I think avoidance is the main issue. Avoiding food, avoiding public transport, avoiding public places to an extent, avoiding restaurants, absolutely like kicking the ass out of TripAdvisor whenever we are away, looking at every single review. And I don't just look for reviews, I type in the search bar sick, and then I'll try food poisoning, and then I'll try unwell, all the keywords, and if there's one single thing, I won't go. It seems to be that bad that like I can make myself feel sick by panicking about being sick. So if the moment I've eaten something and if I feel full or I feel it in my stomach, I'm like, I start to get hot because I know I feel full, and then I associate that with them being sick and that lack of control. So now, I mean, I guess it's a lot easier for me to deal with, because it feels funny saying that really, because I thought it was a lot easier for me to deal with, but saying all that I've just said, I feel like I've just unleashed this massive secret, although it's not a secret. It's never been a secret that I've got a phobia of sick, but I feel quite vulnerable now I've shared all my secrets regarding food. Because I think until you say it out loud, you don't realise how damaging half these traits are, and it's all to avoid the ultimate thing of being sick. And it's just, it's bizarre, it's not even rational. Like, when I'm talking about it, it's irrational, and I think it's stupid, but it's a mindset, and it's a deep-rooted fear. Because like I say, nobody likes being sick, nobody likes being around it or anything that comes with it, but it's that absolute paralysing fear. Literally, I explained it once, like, it felt like someone is literally injecting liquid fear right into your bloodstream, and you just like can't feel anything else but this overwhelming fear and this desire to like get out, leave. Yeah, very hard, and it makes you feel very selfish and not like a good friend or a good family member when you can't look after your friends or your family. And it made me very unsocial for a long time, because it was like at the peak time when people were having parties and drinking a lot and like girls' holidays, things like that, and I wouldn't, because I'd associate that with sick, like clubbing and nights out and things like that. Toilets on a night out, yeah, just it stopped me drinking for a long time. I didn't drink at all through the fear of being sick, and even when I do now, I've never ever been sick from alcohol, because I know when to stop, and in order to avoid that happening. Ways I cope now is something I always remembered that my counsellor said was, horses die because they can't be sick. And honestly, I must think about that at least every couple of days. If I find myself absolutely getting overwhelmed with panic, I try and switch it around and think, no, sick is a good thing. It's your body getting rid of something that's bad in your body, of something that's not agreeing with you. It's just your way of getting it out, so it can be out of your system and you can feel better again. And because horses can't do that, it gets a lot worse in the stomach, and because they can't get it out, it can kill them. So yeah, that was just one sentence that my counsellor told me once, one fact, and it's stuck with me ever since. And I thought, well, imagine if that was the case with us. And then I started to try and think of it as like, certainly not a blessing, but certainly a good thing and a function that my body has to do. And then I tried to think of how many millions of people it'll happen to every day, and it's not a disgusting or embarrassing thing to happen, it's just an unfortunate thing. I also try and think about the times it's happened to me before and how many of them I've not survived, which is obviously none. I've survived them all. Here I am talking about it. And also, when I was at the start of my journey of trying to recover, I joined a lot of Facebook groups, like Emetophobia UK or something like that, and I eventually had to leave that group because I was finding it more triggering than helpful. Because as I started to grow and change and start to cope a bit better, I'd see certain triggering posts about something new that would set someone off, or I'd see people in a lot worse place than me, and it'd take me right back to that moment. So eventually I had to leave those groups, but there is support out there, and the more you talk about it, the more people will connect and understand. And it's a hard one because people don't understand. The amount of times I've tried to open up and people just say, well, who likes being sick? Oh, but it's not that. It's much more in depth than that. And now I feel at a point where I'd like to go into a healthcare role because I feel like I could cope more, and I realise that I just have to let go of the control. Like, if it's me being sick, I know I'll survive, and if it's someone else, I would want someone to look after me. So if anyone's watching this and they need help, please do comment down below or find me on Instagram and we can talk about it, because I don't want anyone to ever feel alone. But it used to get me really down because I used to question how I'd ever be a mum and stuff as well, because I'd think, how can I look after children if they're sick, or how can I cope with that, or morning sickness, or sickness during pregnancy, during labour. But now the thought of having a baby and wanting a child outweighs all of the negativity surrounding being sick, and I just try and see it as a good thing, as a necessary thing that your body has to do, but it doesn't make it any easier to cope with. And my hopes are that one day it won't scare me so much anymore and I will be able to live a normal life. It doesn't stop me from going out and doing things now, but I'd just like to not think about it every single day and not worry every single day. And I would love to stop writing food diaries. I would love to stop restricting what I eat, and I would like to get a lot better relationship with food and be kind to myself about things and choices, and just remember everything I've learned so far. But I don't feel like this is very helpful, this video, because it's not like I'm telling you how to cope, because I'm still finding out now. But I just wanted to explain my story and how it affects me day to day, and hopefully someone will watch this and not feel as alone. So I hope I've touched on everything not too bad, and I'll see you very soon for another video.